Hey there, fellow knowledge seekers. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel.
And click on the bell icon.
Right, click on that bell icon for notifications about our latest deep dives.
That's right.
Today,
Yeah.
we're diving deep into a topic that's especially relevant for anyone interested in the Indian economy,
Yes.
particularly those preparing for the UPSC exams,
Absolutely.
or anyone interested in financial literacy,
Of course.
international organizations, and global trade.
Right.
We've got a mountain of sources, articles, reports, the works.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to extract the juiciest bits of information to make you sound like a total economics whiz.
That's the goal.
Think of this as your crash course in international finance. Buckle up, because we're about to navigate a world of acronyms, trade wars, and maybe even some surprising facts about India's role on the global stage.
It's true. The world of international finance can seem like a tangled web,
Oh, yeah,
but we're here to help you untangle it.
absolutely.
Whether you're a student, a UPSC aspirant, or just someone who wants to understand how global economics impacts your daily life, this deep dive is for you.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's set the stage.
Okay.
We often hear about international organizations, but why should we care?
Wow.
What makes them so important, especially for those gearing up for the UPSC exams?
Well, think of it this way. International organizations are like the rule makers and referees of the global economy.
Okay.
They set the standards for trade,
Right.
help countries manage their finances,
Mm-hmm.
and provide a platform for cooperation
Yeah.
and sometimes even competition
Oh.
on a global scale.
Right.
Understanding them is key to understanding how the world works.
Absolutely. And a lot of these institutions have their roots in a pivotal moment in history, right?
Yeah,
The post-World War II era.
that's right.
Yeah.
The Bretton Woods Conference in 1945 was a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
It was like the architects of the post-war world got together
Okay.
and said, okay, how do we prevent another economic catastrophe and rebuild a shattered global system? And from that conference emerged two of the giants of international finance, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, or IMF.
Ah, yes, the Bretton Woods twins.
That's right.
So let's unpack the World Bank first.
Okay.
We know they provide loans, but what exactly do they do with those loans?
It's not just about handing out money.
Okay.
It's about investing in a country's future.
Okay.
The World Bank focuses on long-term development,
Mm-hmm.
working with countries to reduce poverty,
Right.
improve infrastructure,
Yeah.
and promote sustainable economic growth.
Okay.
It's kind of like a global partner in progress.
Absolutely. And speaking of partnerships,
Yeah.
I came across something interesting while prepping for this deep dive.
Oh,
India was actually a founding member of the World Bank,
right.
but we chose not to be part of the ICSID, the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes.
Oh, wow.
Why would we opt out of something like that?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it reflects India's independent stance even in the early days of these institutions.
Okay.
India felt that the ICSID's arbitration rules were skewed in favor of developed countries, and we weren't willing to sign on to something that we felt could potentially put us at a disadvantage.
Right.
It was a bold move that showed India was determined to chart its own course in the global arena.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we had these institutions born out of the post-war era.
Right.
But the world has changed a lot since 1945.
Oh, yeah.
New players have emerged on the scene, challenging the old guard.
That's right.
I'm talking about institutions like the BRICS Bank or New Development Bank
okay.
and the AIIB,
Yes.
the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank.
Right.
What's the story there?
These new institutions reflect a shift in the balance of global power.
Okay.
Notice that the BRICS Bank is headquartered in Shanghai,
Right.
and the AIIB calls Beijing home.
Yeah.
This isn't a coincidence.
No.
It signals the rising influence of China and other emerging economies on the world stage.
Yeah.
They're not just participating in the existing system.
Right.
They're creating their own institutions and setting their own rules.
So it's not just about prestige or symbolism.
Oh,
These institutions are making a real impact.
absolutely.
Both the BRICS Bank and the AIIB provided substantial loans to India during the COVID-19 crisis, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The BRICS Bank extended a $1 billion loan,
Okay.
and the AIIB came through with another $750 million.
Wow.
These funds were crucial in helping India navigate the economic fallout of the pandemic.
Right.
It shows how these institutions are becoming key players in global development finance.
Okay, so we've explored the World Bank and these newer institutions.
Right.
But no discussion of international finance would be complete without talking about the IMF.
Of course.
It's kind of a big deal, right?
Definitely a big deal.
Okay.
Think of the IMF as the guardian of global financial stability.
Okay.
They keep a close eye on the world's economies,
Right.
provide loans to countries facing financial crises,
Okay.
and offer technical assistance to help governments manage their economic policies.
Mm.
They're like the emergency responders of the global financial system.
And they have this interesting mechanism called special drawing rights, or SDRs.
Yes.
I remember reading about a recent event where the IMF wanted to issue fresh SDRs to help countries cope with the economic fallout of COVID-19.
Right.
But the plan hit a snag.
Ah, yes, the SDR drama.
Right.
The U.S., which holds significant voting power within the IMF,
Yeah.
expressed concerns about how the new SDRs would be allocated and used.
Right.
They were worried that some countries might misuse the funds
Okay.
or that the allocation wouldn't be fair,
Right.
because the U.S. has enough votes to essentially block any major decision they don't agree with.
Ah.
The IMF's plan was put on hold.
So even in the realm of international finance, we see power dynamics and competing interests at play.
It's true.
It's like a global chess game with high stakes.
Yeah.
Speaking of navigating complex systems, let's move from finances to trade.
Okay.
Cue the dramatic music. From GATT to the WTO. Expert, can you give us the rundown on how these organizations shape the landscape of international trade?
Think of it like this. JATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, was the precursor, setting the stage for freer trade by reducing tariffs.
Right.
But it was like a loose-knit group of countries trying to get along.
Yeah.
Then came the WTO, the World Trade Organization,
Right.
which was like establishing a formal rule book and a court system for global trade.
Okay.
It provided a framework for resolving disputes
Mm-hmm.
and ensuring that everyone was playing by the rules.
Okay.
At least in theory.
And India has been no stranger to the WTO spotlight,
That's right.
especially when it comes to trade disputes with the U.S.
Right.
The solar panel case comes to mind, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The U.S. challenged India's domestic content requirements for solar panels,
Right.
arguing that they discriminated against American companies.
Okay.
The WTO ruled in favor of the U.S.,
Ah.
forcing India to revise its solar energy policy. It was a high-profile case
Yeah.
that highlighted the challenges India faces in balancing its development goals with WTO obligations.
And who could forget the poultry ban, otherwise known as the chicken wars? Ah, yes, a classic example of trade tensions.
Yeah.
India banned the import of American poultry,
Right.
citing concerns about avian influenza.
Okay.
The U.S. cried foul,
Oh.
claiming it was a protectionist measure to shield India's domestic poultry industry.
Okay.
Again, the WTO sided with the U.S.,
Ah.
and India had to allow limited poultry imports.
Okay, we've touched on GT, the WTO,
Yeah.
and these fascinating trade disputes, but let's be honest. The world of international trade is full of jargon that can be confusing,
Oh, yeah.
even for seasoned economics enthusiasts.
It's true.
Can you break down the difference between anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty?
Sure, these are two tools countries use to protect their domestic industries from unfair competition.
Okay.
Dumping is when a country exports goods at a price lower than their domestic price.
Often to gain market share and potentially harm domestic industries.
Right.
Think of it like predatory pricing on a global scale.
Right.
Anti-dumping duty is like a counterattack,
Okay.
leveling the playing field by adding an extra tariff on those unfairly priced imports.
So it's a way to protect domestic industries from being undercut by artificially cheap imports.
Exactly.
Got it. What about countervailing duty?
Countervailing duty comes into play when a country subsidizes its exports,
Right.
making them artificially cheaper in the international market.
Okay.
It's like giving your exporters an unfair advantage.
Got it.
Countervailing duty is imposed to offset the effect of those subsidies,
Okay.
ensuring that competition is fair and not distorted by government intervention.
Right.
It's about maintaining a level playing field for everyone.
So anti-dumping tackles unfairly low prices,
Yes.
while countervailing duty addresses unfair subsidies.
Exactly.
That's like having a cheat sheet for understanding trade policy.
But these tools can be double-edged swords.
Yeah.
While they can protect domestic industries,
Right.
they can also be misused to stifle competition and raise prices for consumers.
Oh.
It's a delicate balancing act that countries have to navigate.
Absolutely. And speaking of navigating complex landscapes,
Yeah,
the world of trade agreements goes way beyond the WTO.
it's true.
There's a whole alphabet soup of acronyms out there. TPP, TTIP, RCEP.
So many acronyms.
It's enough to make your head spin.
It's true. There's a complex web of agreements that govern international trade, and it can be overwhelming to keep track of them all.
Well, let's try to untangle it a bit. Let's focus on RCEP for a moment.
Okay.
It was this massive proposed trade agreement involving India and a bunch of other countries in the Asia-Pacific region.
Right.
What was the big idea behind RCEP?
Well,
And why did India ultimately decide not to join?
RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership,
Right.
aimed to create a huge free trade zone covering a significant chunk of the global economy.
Okay.
The idea was to lower tariffs, reduce trade barriers, and boost economic integration among the participating countries.
Okay.
However, India decided to walk away from the deal.
What were the concerns that led to India's decision?
India had several reservations, primarily about the potential influx of cheap goods from China,
Okay.
which could have hurt our domestic industries,
Right.
particularly in sectors like dairy and agriculture.
Okay.
We also wanted stronger safeguards to protect ourselves from sudden surges in imports.
Right.
It was a tough call,
Yeah.
but the government ultimately decided that the risks outweighed the potential benefits.
So it was a strategic decision to protect India's economic interests.
Yes,
And ensure that any trade agreement we joined served our national goals.
precisely.
Okay.
It highlights that India is becoming more assertive in global trade negotiations
Right.
and is willing to walk away from deals that don't align with our development priorities.
And this assertiveness isn't limited to trade agreements.
No.
India is also a member of various other groupings and alliances that shape our role in the global economy.
Right.
We've got SAARC, BIMSTEC, SCOOS.
Right.
It's enough to make your head spin.
It can seem overwhelming, but each of these organizations plays a different role in India's foreign policy and economic strategy.
Well, let's try to break it down.
Okay.
Starting with SAARC,
Okay.
the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation.
Right.
What's its purpose, and how active is it?
SAARC aims to promote economic and social development in South Asia,
Okay.
fostering cooperation among its member countries.
Right.
However, progress has been hampered by political tensions,
Right.
particularly between India and Pakistan.
Okay.
It's an example of how regional cooperation can be challenging even when there are shared interests.
And BIMSTEC, what does that stand for?
Okay.
And what's India's role in that organization?
BIMSTEC stands for the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation.
Okay.
It focuses on boosting trade and connectivity
Okay.
among countries in the Bay of Bengal region. It includes India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Nepal, and Bhutan.
Okay.
For India, BIMSTEC is a way to strengthen ties with our neighbors
Right.
and counter China's growing influence in the region.
Okay, so SAARC focuses on South Asian cooperation,
Yes.
while BIMSTEC has a more regional focus on the Bay of Bengal area.
Right.
What about the SKO? That's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
The SKO is interesting
Okay.
because it started as a security-focused organization,
Right.
primarily led by China and Russia,
Right.
but it's expanded its scope to include economic cooperation.
Right.
India became a full member in 2017,
Okay.
and it's a platform for us to engage with China and Russia on issues ranging from counterterrorism to trade.
So we see India strategically engaging in these different organizations,
Yes.
each with its own set of goals and challenges.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears again and talk about the big leagues of global cooperation. BRICS, OPEC, OECD, and the G20.
Right.
These are the heavy hitters, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
These forums bring together some of the world's most powerful economies
Right.
to discuss and coordinate policy on everything from trade to finance to climate change.
Yeah.
They have a major impact on the global economic landscape.
Okay, let's start with BRICS.
Yeah.
That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Right.
What's their agenda,
Well,
and how does India fit into the equation?
BRICS is all about boosting cooperation
Okay.
among these major emerging economies,
Right.
often seen as challenging the dominance of Western-led institutions.
Right.
They've established their own development bank,
Okay.
the New Development Bank,
Mm-hmm.
and are working on initiatives to reduce their reliance on the U.S. dollar in international trade.
Wow.
For India, BRICS is a way to project our voice on the global stage
Okay.
and collaborate with other rising powers.
Okay, and OPEC. That's the oil cartel, right?
Yes, OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries,
Right.
is a group of oil-producing nations.
That aims to control oil production and influence global oil prices.
Okay.
They have a huge impact on energy markets.
Right.
And by extension, the global economy.
Yeah.
While India isn't a member of OPEC,
Right.
we're a major oil importer.
Yeah.
So their decisions directly affect our energy security and economic stability.
Okay, so BRICS represents emerging economies,
Yes,
and OPEC controls a crucial global commodity.
that's right.
What about the OECD?
The OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development,
Right.
is a club of mostly developed countries
Okay.
that promote economic growth,
Mhm.
free markets,
Right.
and good governance.
Okay.
India isn't a member,
Right.
but we actively engage with them on various issues,
Okay.
as their policies and standards often set the benchmark for global economic practices.
So even though we're not at the table, we're still paying attention to what's happening there.
Absolutely.
Last but not least, we've got the G20, the group of 20.
Right.
That's the big one, right?
You could say that.
Yeah.
The G20 brings together the world's largest economies,
Right.
representing about 80% of global GDP.
Wow.
It's a forum for discussing and coordinating economic policies.
Okay.
From trade and finance to climate change and development,
Right.
India has been an active member of the G20,
Mm.
using it as a platform to advocate for our interests and shape global economic governance.
And speaking of the G20,
Yeah.
I remember reading about a data dilemma surrounding the Osaka Declaration.
Oh, yeah.
What was that all about?
The Osaka Declaration encouraged cross-border data flow,
Okay.
arguing that it would boost innovation and economic growth.
Okay.
However, several countries, including India,
Right.
expressed concerns about data privacy and security.
So it was a clash between different priorities and perspectives
Exactly.
on the role of data in the global economy.
Exactly. India argued that while we support the free flow of data,
Right.
we need to ensure that our citizens' data is protected
Right.
and that our national interests are safeguarded. This debate highlights the complex challenges countries face
Yeah.
in balancing economic growth with data sovereignty in the digital age.
Okay. It seems like we've just scratched the surface of this complex and fascinating world of international organizations.
There's always more to explore.
Of course.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of international organizations and global trade.
We're back.
We've already covered a lot of ground,
Yeah.
from the origins of institutions like the World Bank and the IMF
Right.
to the complexities of WTO trade disputes.
But we're just getting started. There's a whole universe of trade agreements and economic groupings out there.
It's true.
And understanding them is key to grasping how India navigates the global economy,
Absolutely.
especially for our listeners who are UPSC aspirants.
Right.
This is crucial knowledge
Yeah.
for tackling those tricky economics questions.
Absolutely. It's not just about memorizing names and dates.
Right.
It's about understanding the forces that shape global trade,
Mm-hmm.
the strategic decisions countries make, and how India is positioning itself in this dynamic landscape.
Okay, let's dive back into the alphabet soup of trade agreements. Earlier, we mentioned TPP and TTIP.
Right.
Two mega deals that ultimately fell through.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Oh.
And why should we even care?
These deals, while unsuccessful, offer valuable lessons about the changing dynamics of global trade.
Okay.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP,
Right.
was championed by the U.S.
Okay.
as a way to counter China's growing economic clout in the Asia-Pacific region.
Okay.
However, President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the deal, arguing that it would harm American jobs.
So domestic politics played a role in derailing a major trade agreement.
Yes, it did.
What about TTIP?
The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or TTIP,
Right.
was another ambitious project,
Okay.
aiming to deepen economic ties between the U.S. and the European Union.
Right.
However, negotiations stalled
Okay.
due to disagreements over a range of issues,
Such as?
from agricultural standards and environmental regulations
Right.
to the role of state-owned enterprises.
Oh, wow.
It shows that even among traditional allies, there can be significant differences when it comes to trade.
So these mega deals didn't pan out.
Right.
But India has been actively pursuing its own trade agreements.
That's right.
With various countries and regions.
Right.
I imagine the goal is to boost exports,
Yes.
attract foreign investment,
Mm-hmm.
and strengthen economic ties.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Trade agreements can be powerful tools for economic growth,
Right.
but they're not all created equal.
Okay.
There's a whole spectrum of agreements,
Okay.
from simple preferential trade agreements
Right.
to more comprehensive economic partnerships.
Can you break it down for us? What are the key differences between these various types of agreements?
Think of it like a ladder of economic integration.
Okay.
At the bottom rung,
Right.
you have a partial scope agreement, or PSA. This is the simplest form, covering trade in a limited number of goods between two countries at reduced tariffs.
So it's like dipping your toes into the water of trade liberalization?
Exactly.
Oh,
Moving up the ladder,
All right.
you have preferential trade agreements, or PTAs,
Okay.
and free trade agreements, or FTAs.
Okay.
These involve lower tariffs for member countries,
Right.
but maintain regular tariffs for non-members.
So it's like creating a special club with exclusive perks for members.
Precisely. Now, if countries want to go beyond just reducing tariffs
Okay.
and delve into areas like investment, labor mobility, and intellectual property,
Right.
they could opt for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, or CEPA,
Okay.
or a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, or CECA.
Oh, sound pretty comprehensive.
Uh-huh.
What are some examples of these types of agreements that India has signed?
And India has inked numerous trade pacts, including the India-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement,
Okay.
the South Asian Free Trade Area, or SAFTA,
Right.
and the India-Asian Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement.
And of course, we can't forget the big one that didn't happen, RCEP. We touched on it earlier.
Yeah,
But it's worth revisiting because it illustrates India's evolving approach to trade.
absolutely.
Yeah.
India's decision not to join RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership,
Right.
was a pivotal moment.
Okay.
It showed that we're not just going to sign any deal that comes our way.
Right.
We're going to carefully evaluate the potential impact on our domestic industries and make strategic decisions based on our national interests.
So even though RCEP offered the promise of greater market access and economic integration,
Yes,
India decided it wasn't the right fit for us at this time.
precisely.
Okay.
It was a bold move that signaled India's growing assertiveness in global trade negotiations.
Right.
We're willing to walk away from deals that we perceive as unfavorable.
It's a reminder that trade agreements are not just about economics.
Oh.
They're also about politics, strategy, and protecting domestic interests.
Right.
Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
let's talk about another layer of complexity in the world of international trade. Export control regimes.
Okay.
What are these regimes all about, and
But-
why should we care?
Export control regimes are essentially international agreements
Okay.
that aim to control the export of sensitive goods and technologies.
Right.
This is especially crucial for goods and technologies
Okay.
that could be used for military purposes
Yeah.
or pose a threat to national security.
Right.
Think of it like a global effort to prevent the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction
Right.
and other dangerous technologies.
So it's about striking a balance between promoting international trade and cooperation
Yes,
while safeguarding national security interests.
exactly.
Where does India stand in all of this?
India has been actively engaging with these regimes in recent years.
Okay.
We became a member of the Missile Technology Control Regime, or MTCR, in 2016,
Okay.
and joined the Wassenaar Arrangement in 2017. These memberships demonstrate India's commitment to non-proliferation and responsible export controls.
And what about the Nuclear Suppliers Group, or NSG?
Right.
I know India has been seeking membership for many years.
The NSG is a key regime that controls the export of nuclear materials and technology.
Right.
India's quest for membership has faced obstacles due to objections from some members, particularly China.
Ah.
This is a reminder of the geopolitical complexities that often intersect with international trade and technology transfer.
So it's a mixed bag for India in this arena.
Yeah.
Successes and ongoing challenges.
Yes, it is.
Now, before we move on to the current state of global trade and the burning issues that India faces,
Right.
let's take a quick detour
Okay.
and revisit some other economic groupings that we haven't discussed in detail.
Sure. Beyond SAARC and BIMSTEC,
Yeah.
India actively engages in other regional and global groupings.
Okay.
The Mekong-Gunga Cooperation, for example,
Right.
focuses on fostering collaboration between India and 5 ASEAN countries, with an emphasis on sectors like tourism, culture, and education.
And what about ASEAN itself? That's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, right?
That's right.
What's India's relationship with ASEAN?
ASEAN is a crucial regional organization for India.
Okay.
We have a strategic partnership with ASEAN
Right.
and actively participate in their summits and initiatives.
Okay.
ASEAN is a key player in the Indo-Pacific region.
Right.
And India sees strong ties with ASEAN as vital to our economic and strategic interests.
And, of course, we've already discussed the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SEO.
Right.
It's interesting how India is part of this organization that's heavily influenced by China and Russia.
The SEO reflects the complex realities of geopolitics.
Okay.
While there may be differences in areas of competition,
Right.
there are also shared interests and opportunities for cooperation.
Okay.
India's engagement with the SEO allows us to have a seat at the table, voice our concerns,
Right.
and explore areas of convergence with these key powers.
So it's a multi-dimensional chess game
Yes.
where India is playing on multiple boards,
Right.
balancing cooperation and competition, and navigating a web of relationships to advance our interests.
Exactly. And this complexity is only heightened when we consider the current state of global trade
Right.
and the challenges India faces in this turbulent landscape.
Well, that brings us to our next chapter.
Okay.
We've explored the institutions, the agreements, and the groupings that shape global trade.
That's right.
Now, let's turn our attention to the burning issues
Right.
that are dominating headlines and shaping India's economic future.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of international organizations and global trade.
Yes, we are.
In this final part,
Right.
we're shifting our focus from the what and the how to the so what.
Okay.
What does the future hold for these institutions?
Right.
And how can India leverage its growing influence to shape a more equitable and sustainable global economic order?
It's a big question.
Especially for our UPSC aspirants.
Yeah.
Understanding these dynamics is crucial for crafting well-informed perspectives on India's role in the world.
That's right.
Okay.
It's not just about understanding the past and present. It's about analyzing trends, anticipating challenges, and envisioning solutions.
All right.
India is at a pivotal moment,
Okay.
and how we engage with these institutions will have a significant impact on our economic trajectory.
So let's start with the elephant in the room,
Oh,
the World Trade Organization.
okay.
It's been facing a lot of criticism lately, hasn't it?
It has.
Some say it's ineffective,
Right.
outdated, and biased towards developed countries.
Those criticisms are not entirely unfounded.
Okay.
The WTO's dispute settlement system, once its crown jewel, has been paralyzed.
Oh, wow.
Due to disagreements over the appointment of judges, negotiations on key issues like agricultural subsidies and e-commerce have stalled. And there's a growing sense that the organization hasn't adapted effectively to the changing dynamics of global trade, especially the rise of digital technologies and the growing clout of emerging economies.
So is the WTO doomed?
Well,
Is it time to hit the reset button and create a new system altogether?
not necessarily.
Okay.
While reform is undoubtedly needed,
Right.
scrapping the WTO and starting from scratch would be a Herculean task.
Yeah,
It's easier said than done.
of course.
A more pragmatic approach would be to focus on revitalizing the WTO,
Right.
making it more responsive to the needs of developing countries,
Okay.
and equipping it to address the challenges of the 21st century global economy.
And what role can emerging economies like India play in this reform process?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
India, with its growing economic weight and its experience as both a champion of developing country interests and a major player in global trade,
Right.
is uniquely positioned to lead the charge for a more equitable and inclusive WTO.
So it's not just about reacting to the rules.
No.
It's about being at the table and shaping the rules themselves.
Precisely. India has already shown its willingness to do this.
Okay.
We've been pushing for reforms in agricultural trade,
Right.
advocating for special and differential treatment for developing countries,
Right.
and challenging unfair trade practices. It's about ensuring that the global trading system works for everyone, not just a select few.
It seems like India has a lot to offer,
We do.
not just in terms of economic power, but also in terms of ideas and vision for a more just and sustainable global economic system.
Absolutely. And this proactive approach should extend beyond the WTO.
Okay.
India is actively participating in other key forums like the G20, BRICS, and the AIIB,
Right.
advocating for a more balanced and inclusive approach to global economic governance.
Okay.
It's about building bridges,
Hmm.
forging partnerships, and
Right.
working towards a system that reflects India's values and interests.
So it's a multi-pronged strategy,
Yes.
engaging with both established institutions and newer platforms to shape the global economic order.
Exactly. It's a complex and dynamic process.
Of course.
But India is increasingly demonstrating its leadership on the global stage.
Well, we've covered a vast terrain in this deep dive.
Yeah,
We've explored the history,
that's right.
the mechanics,
Hmm.
and the challenges of international organizations and global trade.
Right.
We've also glimpsed into the future,
Yes.
where India has a unique opportunity to shape a more equitable and sustainable global economic order.
That's true.
Well, expert, thanks for taking us on this deep dive through international organizations and global trade.
Of course, it was my pleasure.
For our listeners, be sure to check out the links in the show notes for further reading on this topic.
Yes, check those out.
Until next time.